Hello Canada, welcome back to another edition of the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, alias Guy. Well, the propaganda arm of the government is doing what it does best and dragging the indigenous people into a war that is completely against the indigenous people itself. Now everybody's kind of playing this video. I'm not going to show you the entirety. I'm just going to show you a small clip of it because it's repulsive. It goes against everything that I've been taught. And there's this thing called the 7 sacred laws. They broke all 7 of them. Yeah. So, and we're going to straighten out the treaty thing and go to. I'm going to skip right over the whole negativity part of it. I just want to show a little wee bit of it, and just show the benefits of what the resource sector has done as opposed to what the federal government has absolutely destroyed the indigenous cultures in our country. It's them who are the problem. And the fact that you have some chiefs now being pushed by, and there's a couple good words for it, they're really long, I don't say them very well. But in other words, an evil spirit with a long stick. And in this case, it is Nenshi, the NDP, sitting back there, darkening the hearts of these chiefs. I'm going to play just a little wee bit of this rhetoric. This completely goes against the creator. Like, it just goes against every tribe, every nation's true belief. How everything, for anything that is created, should be treated with respect and equality. This goes against everything. I'm just going to play a little wee bit. This is absolutely disgusting.
Pack up your bag and go. That's my message to the Premier. You're not welcome here anymore.
Chief Alan Adam fed up with Alberta's Premier and her policies. Those include a move to lower the number of signatures required to start a referendum vote, even one on Alberta separation. That bill, number 54, literally thrown on the ground at a Chiefs press conference in Edmonton on Tuesday.
Now, every single one of them should be embarrassed. And don't worry, the Creator's looking down on them. So are the spirits of their ancestors looking down on them. And so are all of us younger generations looking at them. Well, I guess I'd be older than they are. Shaking our heads going, you guys have completely lost your way. You've completely lost your way. You got Nenshi sitting behind you, man. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Now, like I said, they broke every single one of the 7 laws. They broke every one of them. Let's just deal with this one in particular chief. I'm not gonna rabble rouse all of them. But what kind of a chief would take money from outside source to purposely hurt the industry that could save his people? Well, that would be this guy. First Nations chief receives $55,000 from Tides Foundation. That's him when he's a lot younger. A left-wing lobby group in San Francisco wired $55,000 to the bank account of an Indian chief in northern Alberta, paying him to oppose the oil sands. And sure enough, that chief, Alan Adam, from the Athabasca Chippewa First Nation, earned his money last weekend. He flew to Toronto to sit on stage next to Neil Young. Yeah, Neil Young. Hello. What a waste of skin that man is. The folk singer who was in town to demonize Canada's oil industry. Now, $55,000 might sound like a lot of money to pay just to rent a politician for a day if all the chief did for his money was to appear on stage at Toronto beside Neil Young. But to the Tides Foundation, it's well worth it. Think of Adam as an actor hired to play a part in the elaborate theatrical production. And it was. This man is a disgrace. He needs to sit with his elders. He needs to sweat and maybe smoke the pipe if the elders see him mature enough to do so. I'm going to post these down. These are the treaties. Now, this actually isn't the treaty. This is from the University of Alberta, the Faculty of the Arts. Now, yes, there's a lot of wokeism in it, but I just wanted to read one specific part out of this and end this whole idea that all of the land that you are on doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the Indians. That is a lie. It's an outright lie. In fact, it goes against, once again, indigenous belief. They don't own anything. You're not supposed to. The Creator does. So the fact that they're saying it's their land, buddy, yeah, you better get back to your teachings. Get out of the books and get back to the oral teachings of your ancestors, and you need to regroup yourself. Yeah, scary. Since its signing in 1876, there have been numerous conflicts between the Indigenous signatories and the Canadian government over varied interpretations of the terms of Treaty 6. Specifically relating to land ownership and transfers, Indigenous signatories were not familiar with the settler concept of land ownership when the treaty was signed, and instead believed Treaty 6 was signed as an agreement to share and steward the land together. In return for the contested cession of the majority of Treaty 6 lands, Indigenous signatories were promised certain benefits, including annual payments, education, and medical support, although they have had to continuously fight for these beliefs since the signing took place. Now, it goes on to say how, this is why they actively acknowledge that you're on treaty land, which I get sick to the stomach, and sometimes I burst out laughing and just try to embarrass the person saying it. Kind of like what that RCMP officer did while kind of having that announcement about the kids, and they had to start off, instead of letting people know the truth, they had to acknowledge that they're on some treaty land, which is meaningless, and then bring up black people and how they're part of the heritage of Canada for 400 years, which all of this race talk is completely against the Creator. The Creator does not look at any color of anything. He looks at all humans equally. There is no race. This is the system. This is the belief. This is what I believe. Call it colorblind, if you will. That's the culture. And now all of a sudden, this is the government twisting the Indigenous culture to be used against itself. These chiefs need to wake up. You've fallen right into this trap, the same trap that Trudeau has used, in the lie of mass graves. They don't exist. Zero, nada, zilch. It's a lie. It's done to divide, create fear and hate. This is what evil does. You should know this. You're just allowing the Windigo. It's sad. If you don't know what that is, look it up. But that's exactly what they're doing. They're allowing the Windigo to come down and feed upon them. It's a sad state of affair. These people, like I said, they need to get back to their roots. They need to sweat. Now, I'm going to play some clips on... Okay. The government has completely tried to squash the religion, the languages, the belief system. And they've done it, obviously, if these chiefs are talking like that. They've succeeded. What they've also done is, through law, they've removed a way of life, the hunting and trapping, that fed, clothed, and housed the Indigenous people in Canada for 7,000 years. Now they're coming after your guns. That is the finishing blow to destroying the Indigenous way of life. This is the way it is. Oh, you're not supposed to kill animals. Pelting is bad. And then put laws on and then change it so that you can't sell it, dropping the prices in what the pelts are worth, making the Indigenous time worthless. Forcing them into a system of socialist, into the we'll give you what you need, but never enough to get ahead. you will own nothing and you will be happy. Does it sound familiar, Canada? This is what they've done to the indigenous. This is the Indian Act. They've removed the right to passage. The government tells you if you are indigenous or not. Am I not indigenous? Are you not indigenous? Or how do you know? Well, because the government tells you, or you have to put an application in so that you can get the little number on your arm. Well, in this case, it's a card. Do you see where I'm, do you understand this? This is that ideology. The Liberal Party is just turning Canada into one great big reserve. They're trying to do to Canada what they've done to the Indigenous, and now you have these Indigenous people fighting back against fighting with their oppressors. Now, the trade that filled that hardship and uplifted the Indigenous people is the resource industry. And I'm going to show you a whole bunch of different clips on how great the resource industry has been. And the Liberal government is trying to shut that down too, for their green agenda. Let's start off. I ran this clip before. I'm going to run it again, so if you're a new viewer, you can see it for the first time. If you are a repeat watcher, which thank you very much for like, sharing, and subscribing, it helps me to grow the channel. You've probably seen this small clip before.
Bringing an Indigenous perspective into the Alberta election. One candidate here in Edmonton Decor thinks the best path to reconciliation is an independent Alberta.
We're in a different time. Unfortunately, we are our backs against the wall. We've never been heard.
Virginia Bruno didn't expect to be fighting for Alberta's separation from Canada.
When separation first came to mind, I might add, I was heartbroken, as well as many other Albertans, I'm sure.
But when she read the platform, things like more control over resource management and the oil sands, an end to equalization payments, and the opportunity to renegotiate treaties and keep the funding in Alberta spoke to her.
There's a platform for First Nations to get them self-governance, to make them have a say in the world's economy. Where does it start? First got the reserve.
She says watching her father drive back and forth to the city daily, protesting for First Nations education rights outside what was once the Department of Indian Affairs, gave her the inspiration to give back, and points to issues like water and housing as a failure in federal management.
And to ignore the fact that there are people getting sick from water, there are people living in homes that are unsafe. There are people that, struggle day to day.
Bruno does realize the Alberta Independence Party, largely seen as a fringe movement, likely won't take government. But she hopes it continues the conversation for a stronger Alberta on and off reserve, whether she wins her seat or not. So even if you're not elected, you're still going to keep fighting?
I am. I'm going to have my way. Getting water and housing on reserves. I will have my way. It's just a matter of when.
In Edmonton, Carly.
See? A seat at the table. Let's just keep on going. This is your federal government for you.
This dock is a meeting spot in Fort Chipewyan, an area where people swim, fish, and harvest. But Indigenous leaders say, according to a Transport Canada report, it's also the site of toxic contamination in the water and sediment.
They found heavy metals like arsenic, mercury, and iron.
Who's that?
And they also found uranium.
That federal report was done in 2017, but local leaders say they were never told about it.
The federal government always talks about truth and reconciliation.
Was that the Alberta government or was that the federal government?
But yet they cannot be truthful to something that's so important to us, and that's the health of our water.
The community says it did its own water and sediment testing this past summer and found toxic substances were still present in the water and sediment. Residents have been told to stay away from the dock by local leaders.
Do not.
Right. So they'd rather stand up for the federal government now, or is it because they have Nenshi standing behind them? Windigo. Let's just see how good resources have been when they're allowed to.
Grace Richards has done what she can to make this trailer a home, but without running water and electricity, every day brings a new challenge.
It's falling apart now, and to tell you the truth, I don't think if I had to stay here another winter, I don't think I'd be able to do it. A shower. A shower. Yeah.
Richards and her sister will soon move into pre-built homes like these ones. The oil and gas company Cenovus is spending $50 million to build homes in 6 First Nations and Métis communities.
Fundamentally, Cenovus wants to be a good neighbor in the communities that we are adjacent and working with.
It means people will get out of the, you could say, poverty situations that they are currently living in and live in more standard living with running water, with proper heating, just a warm home to live in during the winter.
According to Statistics Canada, Indigenous people are more likely than non-Indigenous people to live in crowded housing and homes that need major repair. Here, it's a problem despite being a stone's throw from oil sands facilities that generate billions in annual revenue.
There's this massive crisis in Indigenous housing in the middle of some of the wealthiest piece of land in the world. It just doesn't make any sense.
This investment won't solve that crisis, but it's a start, he says.
It represents a realization on the part of the more progressive and innovative Canadian companies that their long-term viability relies on a deep and profound connection with Indigenous communities.
Cenovus says it will build 35 homes in this community by the end of next year.
What is Carney going to do? He's the one who's been pushing the Liberal Party for the last 10 years. It's his values, remember, to shut down the oil and gas sector. You want to stay federal? Do you really?
We've benefited from oil and gas. You know, with the development of the Alberta Indigenous Opportunities Corporation, really gave the opportunity for First Nations to...
Oh, sorry, was that the federal? Oh, no. Shuck, that was the Alberta. That was the provincial. Remember that?
Participate as equity owners. And you have to understand our communities do not have any investment capital. Domestically, we are just trying to find a better life for our First Nation communities. And it's been industry that's been probably our strongest partner in probably in the last 10 years.
Of course it is. Because the federal government has done everything it can. It's done everything at its fingertips, everything at its disposal to crush the Indigenous way of life. And it's succeeded. But it can come back. It can come back by removing gun laws. It can come back by allowing Indigenous communities the right to herd and raise wild animals. It can come back through bringing back the languages. None of this is going to happen through the federal government. How many, 140 years of complete totalitarian rule, suppression? It's in the Indigenous' best look forward to leave Canada. It's just too bad that we've had so many generations being brainwashed into this federalist idea that the government is there to help. Have they really helped you? Have they really helped you? Many First Nations and rural Canada face high energy costs in the winter, sometimes close to $1,800 a month.
I'm going to say probably half of their monthly check is paid to power, and that's just power, right? That's not counting the rent we charge on the First Nation here. So you take that cost out of there, they're going to end up with maybe an average of $200 to $50 every 2 weeks for extra, and that's nothing in today's day and age.
And you can't make ends meet when all your money is going to bills, right?
We've been calling it heat poverty, because that's what it really is that we have to eat, our family shouldn't have to make a choice between food and heat. So, and just being able to provide for their families.
Okay, my name is Mark Fox from the Pipot First Nation, Chief of Pipot First Nation.
My name is Chief Christine Longjohn. I'm born here in Sturgeon Lake.
Chief Edwin Ananas of the Beardies Nokomasis Cree Nation.
A lot of our homes are run on propane. They run on electric heat.
Heating oil, propane, or electric heat.
To fill our tanks, it's costing us about $1,400, and depending on the cold weather that we get, that propane can last, 2 months maybe.
We've had a lot of issues where when people run low on propane, it will gel up, and then your furnace does not work, right? And then we have elders and children in these homes who put us, I guess, in emergency situations. Yeah.
It doesn't matter where we live within Saskatchewan, we all have the same concerns. We have the delivery, the affordability, and all of those concerns. We have to wait for delivery of propane. When you're out. So we have to get on a list of delivery. And so we have to wait for that delivery to come. And that can, between 2-3 business days to a week. And so within that time, you're really hoping that you're not running out of propane.
So I guess the major thing with energy is natural gas, needing natural gas for our homes.
We have natural gas all around us. Somehow our nation was left out of the loop at that time. And so we want to be, I guess, just like every other homeowner that has that choice to be able to use natural gas within their homes.
It's a lot safer in the wintertime to run natural gas.
In summer 2024, a group of First Nation chiefs of Saskatchewan put forward a resolution to seek support from the Assembly of First Nations to access natural gas.
So representatives of our nation went to NRCan. NRCan is not interested in funding fossil fuels. They're not interested in reducing energy poverty in our nation.
Yeah, so I think that's the government's focus, is to go down a more greener infrastructure for the future. But how long is that going to take?
20 years of lobbying for natural gas, and it's time that it's listened to and that they take this seriously.
Come to my nation and see how my people are living and the struggles that they have day to day out here because of the high cost of energy, electric heat, propane. Come and see for yourself. And you're telling me we're not interested in bringing gasification out here or to fund it because you're waiting for renewable energy? Doesn't sit well with me.
We're just going to keep saying it over and over and over until it's done.
Now, tell me again how the federal government is helping. This clip was Saskatchewan, but this is also throughout Alberta, because the natives are tied to the federal government. Now, wouldn't it be nice to have a seat at the table? Wouldn't it nice, like, wouldn't it be beneficial to your people to have an equal say? That can only be done if Alberta and Saskatchewan separate. And I can guarantee you here in Saskatchewan, the second we're done with the federal government, there will be natural gas at every single home. And another thing, the Indigenous will be allowed to own their own homes. We could change all of the silly colonial style forced fascist ideas from the federal government and give you your first real true taste of democracy. You know, the thing that your ancestors once had, where everybody had a seat at the table. Nobody went hungry, ever. You feed the weak first. That's tribal way of life. I hunt. I take the best cuts. When I fish, I give the best cuts to the elders and to the children. That is the way of life. Why are these supposed chiefs insulting their own way of life by wanting to stay in a federalist, fascist life? Not all Indigenous are believers of this. So don't let the media tell you that all the Aboriginals, all the Indigenous people, all the chiefs are aligned in a row like ducks. Bullcrap. Absolute bullcrap.
It was supposed to create thousands of jobs and bring in billions of dollars to the Alberta government. And for some Indigenous leadership, a growing opportunity for their communities. Ron Quintel of the Fort McKay Métis says Teck's decision to kill the Frontier Mine project is a big setback to Indigenous communities that would benefit from it.
I didn't at all anticipate what was yet to come, and the fact that the federal government or the Teck was pulling the application with the federal government. So it was absolutely shock and awe.
The mine was to be built north of Fort McMurray. Teck made the announcement late Sunday, just days before the federal government was set to make its decision as to whether or not the massive $20 billion project will be approved. Teck wrote a letter to the Federal Minister of Environment and Climate Change outlining the reasons for the withdrawal, pointing out ongoing debates over climate policy. The letter stated global capital markets are changing rapidly, and investors and customers are increasingly looking for jurisdictions to have a framework in place that reconciles resource development and climate change in order to produce the cleanest possible products.
It's heartbreaking. I mean, it had the environmental oversight, environmental mitigation. You know, they were very much so in line with climate change.
Shame on the Canadian government! For some, this is a victory. The project sparked outrage across the country, thousands rallying against it to protect things like bison herds and woodland caribou in the region. Ariel Deranger of Indigenous Climate Action said she was in disbelief when she heard the news.
So compounding the climate crisis issues was really the point of this, and to us, not think that this is the only way forward for the province. It gives us a really good opportunity to have a broader conversation around, a just transition, not just for the country, but particularly for the region and for the communities.
But Alberta Premier Jason Kenney says the decision is a grave disappointment to Albertans, costing the province 7,000 jobs and $70 billion in revenues. Quintel says this is a step backward, not only for the Fort McKay Métis, but for the whole country.
In the evolution of the energy industry, never before have Indigenous people been given the opportunities to get involved in equity ownership and economic opportunities. Now that we're here, and you finally got proponents giving Indigenous people serious attention, to have a project being withdrawn like this takes us in the absolute wrong direction we need to go in.
Tamara Pimentel, APT.
Do you really think all the Indigenous agree with those chiefs? I don't think so.
Approach and collaboration can unlock value. When you really get down to the energy transition, it's not just about, how much fossil fuel production there is. It's about all the sources of supply that are going to be needed in the years ahead. And what does that take? It takes infrastructure. Any way you look at it, any type of energy supply requires infrastructure to get from point A to point B. And so what we're doing here today, it gives us confidence that we've got a model of collaboration that can work. And I think it really unlocks the value through partnership.
We want to be at the table, we want to be engaged, not just consulted, and not just, again, brushing for 2 months. We need to look at long term, we need to look at sustainability, and I too, looking forward to working along with Enbridge. Just sitting there, we talked about a green pipeline. How do we turn it into a green pipeline? Now we're partners. I have to be accountable too, and we have to look at ways. And how many people know that these pipelines are double lined when they cross underneath a waterway, or they go around animal fouls and stuff like that. But I think that this is what we wanted as First Nations people, is to be at the table and to have the ability to be owners is important. And again, it takes the government of Alberta to put something together like this. As a chief and as a leader of the province or a Métis settlement, we're tasked to pull your people along. And this is one way that we will pull all our people along, even the ones that are struggling with an addiction. You have to pull them along. And you know what? This has been a long time coming, and we're just looking forward to moving forward with Enbridge. And it's a template that I hope other industry partners will use. Thank you.
Media isn't showing you that, are they? That's why I decided to create this channel. Sorry, just the facts. And then you get the extreme part of all of this. Now, because of the federal government's abuse for over 100 years, they've created a completely tore apart society. They've created the racism that exists today because Indigenous are Indigenous, white are white. And nowadays it's even worse with this new progressive way of thinking, how, ooh, if you're black, and Chinese is Chinese. And instead of the Indigenous way of thinking, how everything is equal. Now we have Indigenous who are using this system against not only their own heritage and belief, but they're using it against the Creator. Now, Indigenous for thousands of years have known there are times to hunt the buffalo, the bison, the deer, the elk, and there are times you don't hunt. If it means you have an empty stomach in order for your kids to have food, you don't take down a pregnant cow. This ebb and flow has been tore. And now you have greed and want and hate and division. And we're seeing this on the East Coast because we haven't given equality, which is the indigenous belief system, which is a funny statement because isn't that what democracy was supposed to be about? Something our federal government still hasn't given the West to this day, which is another serious reason on why we all want to leave. I'm going to play you a little clip.
On the day the Sebago-Negedy First Nation was celebrating the return of seized lobster traps from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, the minister also delivered a blow. Mi'kmaq fishers will have to fish within a regulated commercial season if they want to legally catch and sell lobster.
We're a treaty-based fishery, and those treaties have not changed, and we're going to continue to fish those treaties.
Moderate livelihood fishing tags.
This man is sowing fear, hate, and division. Again, he's going against everything on his own people, against the Creator. Everything. By wanting to fish out of season, to make profit.
Chief Mike Sack has been the face of the fight since his community launched what's known as a moderate livelihood fishery last fall. Band members have been fishing out of season, insisting they have a treaty right to do so that was upheld by the Supreme Court of Canada more than 2 decades ago.
We ain't going anywhere either, man.
It led to violence with non-Indigenous commercial fishers who have maintained they're concerned about conservation of the lobster stocks. Sack says his people can't fish within the season because it takes place in the winter and their boats aren't big enough.
You could literally fit 4 of our boats on one of their boats, so it's just apples and oranges.
The Mi'kmaq say the decision has been made without adequate consultation. The fisheries minister says this is about implementing their right to fish, but that the Supreme Court decision also says treaty rights are subject to regulation as long as it can be justified.
It's extremely important for conservation reasons to make sure that the moderate livelihood fishery also takes place during a season when lobsters are replenished.
Commercial fishers say enforcement will be key.
I think there's still a lot of work to be done to satisfy the rights of Indigenous people and also to protect the fishery for all of us.
The minister says DFO officers will be out on the water to stop illegal fishing. Chief Sack says he'll support his people in court if he has to, but hopes it doesn't come to that.
This is what happens. Decades and decades and decades of this abuse of power from the federal government has created this problem. Now, do I know how to solve it? No, I don't. But I know one thing, the beliefs of both sides of this are so closely to being the same. The agitator is the federal government. If you fish out of season, you deplete the stock, the breeding stock. You kill the species. That goes against everything about Indigenous belief. Now, why do they think they need to go out? They're saying because it's winter and their boats are bigger. Can this not be solved? How is destroying an ecosystem better than sitting at a table as equal partners? That's what the treaty says. It doesn't give them the right to go out and literally pillage for profit. They are allowed to go out and feed themselves. They're not allowed to go out of season when it can be the most destructive to a species and fish them for profit. That's not the way. We have to find an equal balance between the two. It'll never happen with the federal government. Ever. Heck, they don't want the regular white guy to get ahead, let alone the Indigenous. This whole secession idea is the best path forward for not only the Indigenous, but for Saskatchewan and Alberta and northern BC. By the sounds of it, they're in. They want out of BC. They are tired of it. They're just sick of it. And I don't blame them. For the same reasons. Oppression. All we want is to be equals. Enough of the favoritism. Enough of giving money to one and none to the other. And I mean, wouldn't it be nice for the Indigenous to be able to own their own homes on their reservations? Wouldn't that be a nice thing? You could have that with negotiations, with a new government. One that gives you an equal seat at the table. I don't have the answers to everything. I don't have answers to a lot of problems like with that out east. I don't live there. I have been there many times. I've sat and had drinks and shared great stories with a lot of the Mi'kmaq. Great people. This is wrong. This is wrong. But it's wrong. Why? Because of them? Because of the fishermen that are already fishing? We'll call them the whites. I hate saying it because now I'm sounding like a separate, like I got to separate. It's against everything. I'm colorblind. I don't understand that. All of this can be fixed with a brand new table. And the only way we're going to get a brand new table is if we vote to leave Canada. It is the best path forward. In fact, it's the only path forward. Because even after the lost decade of destruction and the appointment of their new king, who, if you haven't read his book or know anything about him, please check out my previous episodes. This man is evil. He goes against everything, not only democratic, but Indigenous. And like I said, the separation of the two are not that far apart. They actually amalgamate incredibly well. They want equality. They want to have a good life. The federal government has been the thorn in both the shoe and the mukluk. I think it's time we pull the thorn. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And if you are, punch that notification bell so you don't miss any future episodes. Until the next time, you've been watching the Canadian Citizen Journal. I've been your host, alias Tagai. Stay informed.